Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. It's time to start our public hearing in regards to ordinance 21-24 and ordinance amending Holden Beach Code of Ordinances, Chapter 157, Zoning Code. Mr. Hewitt, you want to address this?
This is Mr. Evans's action here.
Talk to us, Mr. Evans.
Is this the, oh. This is the ordinance, right? This is now and now. Well, we jumped right into this, didn't we? Is this the public hearing? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I thought I missed something like the Pledge of Allegiance and all the other stuff. Anyway, all right, this is a public hearing on the possible amendment to the ordinance 157. This is in reference to the location of swimming pools. There have been some support for an ordinance amendment to change that section of the ordinance to not allow swimming pools in the front yard setbacks. The pools at this time are allowed in the front yard setbacks, and they're in the front yard setbacks. They make their way there via a loophole in the ordinance that was written for impervious surface. And they've enjoyed the use of that loophole now for some time. This ordinance would correct that if the commissioners so choose and get those pools out of the front yard setbacks. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners before we listen to the audience? If not, thank you, sir. At this time, Madam Clerk, have you got anything you want to announce? Nobody signed up? Did anybody intend to sign up? Okay, with that, having no speakers, unless you know something I don't, Madam Clerk, I'm going to declare that this public hearing be closed. Is that all right with you? Madam Attorney, is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
Public hearing is closed, and we now shall start the regular monthly meeting of the Town of Holden Beach Board of Commissioners. Those of you that may or may not be aware, in the back of the room, on the table is a copy of the agenda that you can follow along, and I welcome you to do that. The first item on that agenda is invocation, which we will do through a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you very much, and officially we are calling the meeting to order. Welcome all of you. And number 3 on the agenda is a pledge of allegiance to our flag. To my right, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 4 on our agenda, or proposed agenda, is the consideration of officially approving the agenda. Is there a motion of any kind?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Mr. Brown makes
I'm sorry. I need to request that attorney, in executive session with the attorney on the attorney-client.
We just need to add in a 19 executive session also to consult with the attorney.
All right, number 19. Executive session. I'm a little confused. You say add it?
Just additional language to 19. We're already doing the executive session, so we have the property reason, and also in general just to speak with the attorney regarding attorney-client privilege matters.
And I can give the reason when we get to.
Okay. All right. Everybody understand? All right. Looking, who made the motion?
I did, I'll
Do you
make
agree
the,
with that?
A motion with the revisions?
Amendment, all right, you agree with that, Mr. Brown? Yeah. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. We have an amended agenda approved. Number 5, consideration of the minutes of July 8, July 20, and then a regular meeting in June the 20th.
Sorry, that was July 2, that was minor.
God, we seldom catch you in an error. Wow. Okay. Make a note on your minutes. All right, anyone make a motion to approve?
Like a motion to approve the meeting for the minutes for the special meeting July the 8th, the special meeting on July the 20th, and the regular meeting on July the 20th.
All right, is there a second? Second. All right, any discussion?
Yeah, I would ask that on page 12, in the next to last paragraph, where we're talking about the selection for the Board of Parks and Recreation Board, that in the last sentence where there are votes for Susanna Tucker, it says Commissioners Murdoch, Kwiatkowski, and Smith, and it should be Sullivan instead of Smith. The next one says Rosemary Revito, Commissioner Smith.
I voted for Susanna. Thought I did.
So did I,
Okay.
and I didn't vote for her. Then there's a mistake there, then we should remove Rosemary Revito if you didn't vote for her.
One of the ballots did say, and I would have to go back and look, but one of them did vote for Rosemary.
Oh, isn't that the one you looked for last one?
Yeah, on the second time around, there,
did vote for the second.
I could go back and look at.
You voted for Ms. Revito the second time, that's what that says. Yeah. So the revision that I requested would be accurate.
So would you read the way it's supposed to be?
Yes. It says that the board voted between Susanna Tucker and Rosemary Revito for the last position. Susanna Tucker was selected to serve. The votes were Susanna Tucker, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, and Commissioners Murdoch, Kwiatkowski. It says and Smith. It should say and Sullivan. And for Rosemary Revito, Commissioner Smith.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Got that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay, got to get my thoughts back together. We got a motion, we got a correction. Now we're gonna vote on the correction, or as corrected, right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
You vote no?
No.
All right, it's 4-1. Mr. Smith doesn't agree with that. All right?
I'm not sure.
All right, we're on number 6, public comments on the agenda items. Did anybody sign up, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay. Number 7, Chief Dixon.
Good evening. Sorry, I was running behind. Got a scatter of notes here. I'll try to go through. So the police report, just to hit a few highlights here. Incident reports this time, we had a few more than we've been having. Basically, we've had some bicycles walk off and some tools off a few job sites. So we're working on looking into those matters. The parking, we had 83 parking calls this time and issued 70 parking citations across July. The fireworks calls you see there, I think we actually discussed that earlier in July, but it goes back to that. We had 5 fireworks calls, which was down dramatically for our 4th of July this year, and 6 calls and issued 5 fireworks citations. The Traffic stops this month in July, we had 94 traffic stops, which resulted in 49 state citations. Those 49 citations, we had a total of 62 charges. There was 15 for child restraint, 16 were for moving violations such as speeding, stop sign, etc. We had 23 for registration, driver's license, window tint, those style violations. And we had 6 marijuana charges. Some other stuff we've got going on. I've actually been looking at trying to do a bicycle style program, not a full-time patrol, but to have some bicycles available during festivals, 5K races, some of the special events that we do. And so we've reached out to Charlotte Police Department and give them big props. They've actually donated 2 of their bicycles that they use for their bicycle patrols to the police department. So we've got 2 bicycles. And again, this is very, very early in the program. We're still working on policies and procedures and how to work it out, but we're going to try to implement some of those just during special events, races, 5Ks, things like that. Labor Day is September the 6th, so it'll be before we meet again. Expecting big holiday crowds, expect to see the right turn lane or the left turn lane closed. Everyone will have to continue to turn right. So far, that's been a big success for us. There's also a Booze It and Lose It campaign that runs August 30th through September the 12th. We will continue to work with the Governor's Highway Safety Program. So expect to see some checkpoints, extra patrols. The Highway Patrol should probably be involved with this as well. Speaking of working with the Highway Patrol, we have been working with them on some of the low-speed vehicle enforcement and education. Don't know if you've noticed, but they have had a heavier presence around the causeway and our area. So we've had a lot of communication with them and been working very diligently with them. Also in September, from the 20th through the 26th, which I do think we'll meet again before then or somewhere around then, there's a Child Passenger Safety Week. So that's one of the Governor's Highway Safety programs that we're going to participate in this year as well. So we're still working on how to work that program, but we're working with the Highway Patrol and the Governor's Highway Safety program to get some stuff going for that. Hurricane update. We're in the peak season now. It runs from mid-August to late October. So I hope everyone has their hurricane plans ready. We hope that we are not impacted or have to do an evacuation, but if it comes that route, you know, have your stickers, have all your plans together, all that good stuff. Other than that, I think that's really all I've got on the police report this month. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be glad to answer them if I can.
Are the bicycles disappearing from houses, or are they disappearing from like in the bike racks that are in different places around walkways and stuff like that?
I believe the majority of them have actually been under houses, and it's been the rental companies that have reported it. So, and I have not had chance. Usually what happens is they'll disappear for a week or two, and then they'll end up sitting at a bike rack, and somebody will come by and say, hey, this thing's been here for a whole week, and the rental company will usually find their bicycle. Somebody will take it from one location and ride it home because they figure out the walk's a little further than what they thought it would be. So that's what usually happens. I can't say it's what's going on this time, but that would be my guess.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
What all you and your staff does. Mr. Evans?
We've had the public hearing. It's been through the planning board. Depending on, I did notice that we do not have, that I failed to provide to the town. I take that back. We do have the consistency statement. Assuming you must have got it for me. Okay, good job. Yeah. This ordinance went before the planning board. The planning board was unanimous. They voted to send it forward. for the Board of Commissioners to review. We have just got through with the public hearing. It was presented at the last meeting. And it's as simple as it sounds. Staff feels like that the pools are not the safest thing in the front yard setbacks. And we gave a litany of reasons why at the last meeting. But the biggest thing is, we feel like that it would be a benefit as far as public safety and as well to the town if we can get these removed from the front yard setbacks. We feel like that it was an unintended exception that allowed them in the front yard setbacks. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, that's what we presented last time, and that's what we're saying again. So you're down to the point where you need to make a decision about whether you want to include this prohibited section in 157.06D7, which will prohibit pools in front yard setbacks.
I move that we accept the modifications to Part 157 as represented in Ordinance 21-24, which adds the specification that pools are prohibited within the front yard setbacks.
Second.
All right, discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question of Tim. Tim, what if there is an area behind the 25-foot setback that a pool can be installed is in a front yard, is that still acceptable?
That would be allowed to be outside the setbacks. In other words, if you're 100 feet from your setback line, which is basically your property line at the street, then you would still be able to have that pool in the front yard. It just will be out of that area where we feel it will be unsafe. In other words, you'll be 25 feet back. It'll have to be just like the house. It'll have to meet the setback requirements.
We have, in your report earlier, you said something about it's gonna help with the parking requirements for each house.
Well, what I said was, if you can't have a pool now, if your pool interferes with the number of parking places that you're supposed to have, then you won't be allowed to have the pool. What I said was that right now we have a real big parking issue, and we all know that the parking usually overflows at these homes. And whenever they're allowed to use all that area in the front yard that's free, then the overflow ends up in our limited parking spots or parking areas. That's where it's going to end up.
Is this only on Ocean Boulevard, or is this all properties?
It would be everywhere. It would be just about everywhere where we have street right-of-way, which is everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, because we consider both the parking issue and the safety issue to be in consideration. And now, but we've not had any incidents. I mean, we're just saying we feel like it needs to be addressed. See, I really believe that if you're not going to address the unintended exception, then it needs to be addressed that it's allowed. See, it's really nowhere does it say pools are allowed in the front yard. They're actually in the front yard because they unintendedly ended up with those things that we were trying to exempt in the front yard because of what it is. Does that make sense? I mean, am I making any sense? In other words, the town said that patios, decks, and those kinds of things should be exempt if they're on the ground. You know what I mean? And then it went on to talk about impervious products. Well, swimming pools are considered pervious products. And because they're considered a pervious product, they were exempted. So it was never, but remember, everything else is a structure, and so is that. So it has to meet those setback guidelines. And so if it had been not an unintended exception, it wouldn't be allowed anyway. So you either got to address you either got to say it's okay, and it's been okay forever, which is the way it is, or I feel like you either got to say it's allowed or not allowed, or you can just ignore it and leave it for the unintended exception, because that's what we've been having to use.
I'll say one thing, just wave my opinion. Back in early spring, coming down Ocean Boulevard, I saw a car, and Jeremy remembers it probably for whatever reason, is off in the marsh. And if that happens on Ocean Boulevard, to avoid accident or anything of that nature, you could really mess somebody up and get some people hurt. The parking is an issue, and I hate taking things away that have been allowed, but that's just one point I want to make. It could really be dangerous if you had 20 people around the swimming pool in the front yard, and here comes, whatever. I don't even want to think about it, but that was something I was thinking about.
If the commissioners feel like I'm talking out of order, tell me, but I'm sitting here and I'm looking at one pool company sitting in our audience. I have personal knowledge of homeowners that have pools that are ordered. They're not expected to be delivered until well into next year. I know of a couple of those that have not applied for a permit yet, but they have their pools on order, not anticipating them not being able to use those. So if you are going to consider passing this, I would encourage you to put a time and date in the future to consider notice to these people, because I know one family down here on the east end that have been waiting for 5 months for their pool, and it's not going to be delivered until, Mr. Champion, when is that, October? Yeah. So we have these kind of things going on, and I mean, what are we going to do with these people that have ordered, $45,000, $50,000 pool projects?
That have to be paid for up front.
And, you're going to tell them to take the pool and saw it up, take it to landfill, or what are you going to do with them? You're going to have we have no history of anybody getting hurt. I'm not going to argue the point one way or the other. Whatever you want to do is fine with me, but I would encourage you not to just shut it down without some kind of a notice to these people that have an opportunity, a need, a desire, or already under contract to put one in. If it were me, I would put a date out there that you also have homeowners that rent houses that next year are already advertising and promoting that they're going to have a pool, like you're talking about. And, there's more to it than just what's on the surface.
I would just say, Mayor, that I find it unusual that someone would order a $60,000 item without first having permission to place that item. I don't think, Tim, tell me if anybody's built a house on spec before getting permission and submitting for a permit. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think, and I'm in a precarious situation here, because here's what I got to say about what just got said, is that in this day and time, it is not unusual, based on the way products are being handled and delivered, for these folks to be buying stuff way ahead of time. I mean, we're being lenient in the fact that we are having piles of lumber developed late on lots. We wouldn't be so lenient if it wasn't left up to me by the state to determine when construction starts, because in the past that's been kind of an issue. But here in the now, it's not unusual for us to have contractors who are ordering products ahead of date and delivering them before they're getting permits. Now, they're taking a risk. It's at their own risk, that's for sure. And we even have some that are doing the opposite. They're literally taking the chance of putting in foundations without even knowing if they can get the lumber. So it's all actually reversed. So they're not even getting full permits. So the answer to that is that I know for a fact that people are purchasing products well in advance of getting permits. Now, whether they can use them or not is determined by whether or not they get approval. Now, if you want my advice, don't ever buy a swimming pool before you know whether it can go in the ground. Because that here is the biggest Russian roulette I've ever heard of. Because a lot of times these pools have to be adjusted, moved. If there's not been an approved site plan, an approved stormwater plan, and approved CAMA plan and approved CAMA permits in a lot of these positions, ordering that pool ahead of time is no guarantee that you're ever gonna be able to use it. But at the same time, people are ordering stuff ahead of time because they're having to.
I got it, but I'll ask you one other question, because it's legitimate. How would you know going forward who's ordered a pool that's going to be delivered, and somebody who says, you know what, I'm gonna order a pool now, and say I've ordered it, and I've been waiting for 3 months or 4 months to get delivered?
I'm going to tell you that Alan's question is really accurate and valuable about moving it to the future, and I'm going to tell you why. These guys, these builders, actually know that the state of North Carolina has a grace period because of the effect of what's there and what could be anytime we adopt a new building code. There is an adoption and then a grace period. Now, in that period, they can either follow the new rule or follow the old rule, but when the grace period gets to that date, then they have to follow the new rule. So that has been established by law in North Carolina, that you can pass something, especially a construction rule or ordinance, and have it predate for a start date so that this kind of thing is not directly affected. The building code is one of them. The electrical code right now, we adopted it in March. It becomes effective October 1st, the new electrical code. So they can use the old code for this last 4 months, but come October, or the new one, on October 1st, they have to use the new one. So that is a standard when it comes to construction that's used a lot.
Okay, and that makes sense, but what I'm saying to you is, we have X number of people who've taken a chance and ordered pools without getting a permit. Because if they have the permit, they're gonna be able to put the pool in whenever it shows up, right? So we have X number of people who did that. How can we know how many people there are that are currently in that situation, as opposed to how many people are going to allege that they've ordered a pool and have been waiting for it and won't get it delivered till 3 months from now?
Right. There's no way to know that, and that's why I say that you have a date out there, a date and time. That gives them a time to either send their pool back, you know what I mean, get a refund, or you know what I mean? But you have a certain date, because there's no way to know how many of them done that. There's no way to know. So you either got to make an option, you either got to decide you're not going to do anything, or you got to have something and put that date out there. There's no in between, because there's no way to know. There's just really no way to know. That's why the state does it, because they don't know when they pass a new code that says you can't use something. They don't know how many of them's out there, how long it's going to take to deplete it, and that kind of stuff. So they have that established date out there to handle that unknown problem.
You wouldn't be able to ask for a proof of order by a certain date? I mean, if you order something, generally you have a
Well,
document.
the problem with that is I'd have to know who to ask. In other words, you don't know. Yeah, that would be almost impossible. In other words, if we put out something that said you have to tell us by a certain date, you know what I mean, and if they don't tell us, then I don't know what kind of program it would take to reach everybody that might have something in the works. I really don't know.
Well, it would be when you come for your permit, you have to show that you had your pool on order before this date. And it could be literally today's date.
Yeah.
I'm just.
I mean, y'all could make it, I mean, if you wanted to do
No,
that.
I'm trying to get, because.
If you do the effective date, I guess you could put those conditions on it. I'd have to ask, yeah. That you could add those conditions for us to have to.
So if you don't add a condition, the way it would be effective, whoever had their permit, the date that the order goes into effect. But you can add whatever language or additional proof you may need, or if you want to create that window of proof that a pool is ordered, they can still apply for a permit later. It kind of muddies the water. The easiest, cleanest way would be to date the permit's issued. And if you want to extend that in the future, that would be the cleanest way, but you can do it however, if you guys want to add that additional condition.
I'm really confused as to this, is why do you need the product to get the permit?
You don't, because when, you don't.
That's mine.
You don't, because when you build a new house and you have a pool, you approve the permits for everything as it's given to you, and they don't order that pool until later.
Right, but my point being is that you have to have a permit. You gotta get a permit, and you don't have to show proof of a pool to get a permit.
Well, I'll speak to that a minute, because if you ordered a pool, like I ordered one yesterday, the delivery date is February, I can document that, and if I had a permit right now, by the time I got the pool, the permit would be dead. So
Why would it be dead?
the permit would be no good, you didn't start on anything for 6 months.
No, that law changed. When you passed the new 160D stuff, permits issued now go for a year. The 6-month thing went away. That's part of the 160D thing we had to change in both our ordinance and in state law.
That's good.
But the example you've just given, Brian, is exactly what I was asking about, is you have it on order. So when you would come to ask for the permit, you have proof that my pool was on order before
but
this went into effect.
That could totally be easily falsified, so you get into it.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you had a predetermined date in the future, regardless of whether they had a pool or not, if they knew what kind of pool they had, then they could come get them a pool permit.
Correct. So if you got a year, we gave them a year, and
Well, you gave me, I'm gonna need some help. Because we're gonna have 10,000 pools.
My concern would be for the property owners that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a property that are expecting to be able to do it because of current information, and they bought that property but haven't started the build yet and are under the impression they can. It would be hard for them to get this information if they're not right here in this group. So, again, as expensive as property is, it's personal property. And if I bought it with the intent of putting a pool in, and then come to find out after I've already bought the property I'd be a little disturbed. Again, I think we should date it out into the future where we're sure that everybody understands it and is aware of it, make it effective January 1, something of that nature.
But you see, every building code change affects somebody. Just because you buy a piece of property doesn't mean that you have the same rules and ordinances are going to apply to that property into perpetuity. The town has made all kinds of changes, right? We're not going to let people go over a certain amount of feet. We've changed the size of setbacks. We did that in the past 2 years without giving people notice. We had public hearings on it, and then we let people give their opinions, and then we voted on it. And that's the way it works, and I get it. But if we give a 6-month window so people can be aware, I'll be willing to bet that there'll be 3 or 4 times as many pools getting put in front yards in the next 6 months as done in the past. So you defeat the whole purpose of doing it for safety reasons.
I understand if somebody already has a permit, they have a permit. I would rather go down the path of coming up with language that if someone applies for a permit with proof that they had ordered the pool before we put this in effect, that is permissible. But not that we just say for 6 months we're going to delay this, because we will end up with a lot more pools. And the point of this is supposed to be safety and aesthetics. And that doesn't change. It doesn't change in this period of time. It's still a big safety issue.
more discussion?
There's just no way to know how many it's gonna be, and you may need some help, but we have to give them some time. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. It doesn't, you have to. I don't like taking it away to start with, but there's too many reasons. You have to consider all sides, but you can't. When somebody has spent money and is under contract and has bought a piece of property, you have to give them at least a reasonable notice. And I don't, I think 6, 9 months to allow them, okay, if we're really gonna do this, we gotta do it now. And then anybody else that buys is under the pretense that you can't do it, they would know. But I don't think you could take it away today. Because you can't, you really honestly couldn't get a pool in 6 months, 7 months. You could, if you ordered one day, you ain't gonna get it. You ask Ron, you ain't gonna get it. It's impossible. So I don't know how many applications you would get. I've been putting pools on the island for 10 years. I've never put one in the front yard. Not one.
Well, a lot of, you gotta remember, not everybody can put one in the front yard, because if their parking don't allow, put it in the front yard.
And it's just, I don't see on a 50 by 100 foot postage stamp,
Yeah.
They're hot tubs.
yeah, I mean, it's tough, but we still have to allow people
How
some
many,
time.
do you know about how many permits you have for pools that
Yeah,
apply here?
Yeah, it's about, it adds about anywhere from 1.2 to almost 2 million a year in the ad valorem taxes. In other words, the cost, the value that it drives the homes up is that much.
How many permits do you currently have? that
Well,
are
I go by the average, which is 40,000. You do the math. We can run anywhere from 40-some to 100, depending on how many. That's not pools in the front yard, that's pools everywhere. Yeah, we don't have a way of knowing what that front yard number is, but pools add a lot to the value of property. And the other thing to that nature is that not only pools add a lot to the value of the property, but they also help drive the rentals up, which then puts money in the B part. So that's on the table.
Is
Yeah,
end of the year?
if the board, and I don't know where to go with this and what to do now, but I will say this, it may be prudent based on if we're going to consider, and I think it's a good idea, to have some sort of an entry date further in the future. It might be in the best, I don't know if it's in the best or worst interest or whatever, but anything in the future is not now, and anything in the future could create a run. Might it be better to, I mean, it would be up to the board, but to maybe send it back to the planning board and have them look at it? You don't want to do that? Okay, so.
We didn't get public pushback. That's
Right.
another thing is I have gotten no email comments. We didn't get any public comment today. So I want to do the fair thing, but we have not heard of an outcry of you can't do this, which to me is always a consideration as well. So I want to do the right thing and give people a chance to finish what they started. But I don't want to have a free-for-all that, oh my God, let me do this now, and, because we have a window. So I'm trying to come up with a way to do it that's fair to the people who have pools on order or truly are that close to pulling the trigger. For example, building a new house and wanting to put a pool into a small yard. But not just everybody under the sun now says, I'm going to cram it in here. That isn't the point of trying to do this.
Most pools go in the off season, when everybody leaves. So by next rental season, I think people would complete their projects. I mean, that's what we all push for. I think that's a reasonable amount of time. If you guys are, if the consensus is to eliminate them, then I think we need to at least appropriate that amount of time, because all us pool contractors, that's when we jam them in the ground. So nobody's gonna uproot, like, unless it's a new house, they're not gonna stop a rental to put a pool in the yard, so.
So if you gave people until the end of the year to come forward with their permits for a pool, in other words, they're gonna come to you and get a permit, which means you're gonna have to evaluate things, and as you say, everybody who applies for one won't necessarily get it if they don't have enough parking or there's some other reason. Is that enough time for people who are looking at, I want it in for next year, to get themselves on file, they have a permit?
I don't think so, not by the end of the year, no way,
Why?
just can't be done.
It's not putting the pool in, it's doing the necessary work so that they can apply for a permit.
Still a high task for, especially somebody that doesn't have it in the works right now. It can be done, but
Yeah,
it's a challenge.
yeah, it's not, issuing a permit,
But, I mean, what, the question is, again, who spends a vast amount of money, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, without knowing you can actually bring it into
You're
fruition?
looking at it
That ton of the, yes, sir.
all day
Looking
long,
at another one
right there, I guarantee you.
yeah, and that's what I was trying to say, well, right now they're having to, right now, I mean, I'm sure they probably take a risk every once in a while, but right now, based on the way materials and products are, they're having to right now.
How much does it cost to get a permit for a pool?
Well, that depends on how much the cost for putting the pool is, yeah, I can't do the math in
You
my
have to
head.
have the
Problems.
proposals, you have to
Yeah.
have the actual proposals.
Yeah, because it's
Sites,
broke
you have
down,
to have the
most of them
sites.
are broke down, but Ron could probably answer that question faster than anybody. They're all broke down into the different numbers, we have like 6 numbers on that page.
One thing that many of you in the room, I'm sure are not aware, part of the permit process, you have to have an updated survey.
Yeah.
And you try to hire a surveyor right now, they'll tell you they're anywhere from 6 months to 4 months, 6 weeks to 4 months out before they can come to your job site. And then you start the permit process. You can't do anything like a survey.
I heard that, listen.
We try to get it out there as best we can.
It's a catch-22.
Mr. Guganis is covered up.
It is, it's a catch-22, because it's the absolute worst place to put a pool, for a bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you own a piece of property and that's your only option, it'd really be, it's hurtful to take it away. So we probably need to put some thought in it. We definitely need to give them some time if we're gonna pull the trigger on it. But the parking is the worst, because a swimming pool in the front yard of a house, any house.
Doesn't leave any.
I don't care what anybody says in here, anywhere, takes up parking spaces. It's inevitable. Unless you got a 80-foot front yard. If your house is back 30 feet and you put a pool in the yard, you're taking up available parking. Especially on Ocean Boulevard. And you're gonna widen it, and you're gonna put bike lanes in. You're gonna get the road closer and closer to those structures, and it's not safe. Now, off of Ocean Boulevard, totally different, but I don't know. That's, maybe put some more thought in it.
Okay, then, if you have a year once you get your permit, and the idea it can take up to a couple months to get up to 4 months to get a surveyor out to start the process.
That's what's brought me.
Pardon? But I'm trying to come up with what is the fair amount of time to give people to get themselves legal with a permit.
Okay.
I mean, I personally prefer the approach of if you have proof you already ordered your pool as of today, you can go forward with it.
I think you're better off with a deadline in the future, because you're not required, you will never be required to have a pool before you can get a permit. Now, if your condition is that you can't produce a slip where you procured the pool, then that would be one thing. But just producing something saying you have the pool is different. If you give a year, it's the same thing when they write building codes that have thousands of dollars effect on structures every day. And you don't, the condition is simply that you follow the guidelines by the date set into the future. So if you put it out 6 months, and I'm not saying use that y'all should determine the date, but if you put it out 6 months, that means that anybody who really wants a pool, who can get a survey done, you know what I mean, and get the permit and put proper paperwork in, we don't make sure you have the pool before we issue the permit. That cannot be a condition. So you can get a permit and then it's good for a year. So effectively, if you give them 6 months, if they waited to the 6th day to start their application, which is the way the law really reads, if they've got a legitimate application that they've started, then they get a year from that date. So if you gave them 6 months and Ron came in tomorrow with one of them, right, and got a permit, then he would have a year from tomorrow on. If he waited 6 months, then he would have from that 6 months to a year on. So that's the way the law reads and that's the way it works. So once he had a proper application in the office under that 6 month deadline, then he would literally have a year from that date because that permit would still be valid. So my point being is that having them prove to us that they have a pool is not necessary. It wouldn't be necessary before, and it's certainly not necessary afterwards for them to be able to get a permit. So anybody who, between the time you set your date and in the future, from now to set the date in the future, can start whatever clock they want rolling and do whatever it is that they need to do to get a permit. Now, keep in mind, you can still put pools in during the summer, but nobody does it. You know, they don't try to do it unless it's with a new house. Some people do, but you know, they're few. They do. There are some that go in. There's some pool companies that put them in, but they're not at the same rate that they go in during the winter. It's not the same rate. But that's my point is that I don't think that having them prove to us they have a swimming pool shouldn't have anything to do with that future date, because if they want to, if they know they want a swimming pool that's 20 by 30, you know what I mean? That's all they need to know. That's all they need to know. If they know they want one that's 40 by 30, that's all they need to know. If they get a site plan done and draw in their setbacks, it'll tell them exactly how big a pool they can have. You follow what I'm saying? They don't have to have the pool to get the permit. It's a real inherent danger in ordering a pool before you have the permit. I just described all the reasons why. Yeah.
So,
I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying don't do it.
I think we all have a good idea what we're talking about here. I would suggest that we make it effective on January 1st. And that way, people have you're shaking your head no before you listen to what I have to say. That way, it doesn't take people a year, right, to go through the process and have a pool installed. So if somebody already has a pool on order, they should come down and apply for a permit. If they haven't applied for a permit, they have 4 months to make up their mind that they want to have a pool, and they'll be able to apply for that permit. And again, this is not every pool on the island, this is for pools in the front yard. So if you're gonna put a pool in the side yard, in the backyard, you can do it any old time you want. This has no effect on you. So we're gonna be able to reasonably take care of the property owner, and we're gonna take care of the people, which is what we're trying to do in the first place, the safety of the people, by giving them 4 months. Anybody who wants to put a pool in the front yard has 4 months to pull the trigger on the permit process. And after that, too bad, too sad.
If
That's my.
If I could interject, I would like to say one thing. If you're intending to go out into the future, and without getting into a whole lot of rhetoric, I would beg you to make it no less than 6 months.
That's why I
January
was,
1st is 4 months,
January
But-
1st is 4 months out.
right? Roughly 4 months.
I did say 6, right?
yeah,
No, no, I'm
well,
saying
no,
it's
I mean,
4 months.
I was thinking out into February for the 6 months, just because I don't view December as a real month anymore. It's to try to get business done in December, and I know the problems with survey. I mean, I want to make this as short as possible too. If we make it February 1st, we basically got.
I can tell you that when new rules are passed, every general contractor and most of the guys that are not licensed general contractors, but every licensed general contractor and every general contractor, most real estate people and anybody in the industry pretty much already understands that there's always a 6-month grace period if you're gonna have that type of thing. It's always there. It's at least 6 months. And I would say that that's a standard that's been set by the state. You never hear anybody, I've never known the state to have to answer for a new rule that they wrote that cost somebody because they went that 6 months. Do you follow what I'm saying? They at least give everybody 6 months to catch up. You know what I mean? I just say I think it should be 6 months, and I don't, that's all I want to say.
I'll give you my opinion, it's just my opinion. I don't know if it's what I do for a living. If I was a pool contractor, gonna put a pool in the front yard, and I didn't have my permit by like the end of March, I couldn't make the installation comfortably by rental season. So I would like to say the end of March. That would give them the longest amount of time to get the job completed before rental season. So if somebody wanted a pool for next rental season, it would be impossible for an average person, I think, just somebody off the street that didn't know a contractor and didn't know a builder or a pool installer to even get a survey. And then sometimes they have to go through homeowner association groups to get their pools approved, and that takes time. So 4 months is ludicrous. 6 is acceptable, but I
Make it March
would like to
1st.
do March 30th.
If you do March 1st, it's 6.5 months.
Yes.
I can live with that. That's my reason, because they all go in and most pools go in the winter, in the fall. And you gotta give people a fair shake, you gotta give them a chance.
We have to change the motion.
Madam Clerk, would you read the motion back, please?
That we accept the modifications to Part 157 as represented in ordinance 2124, which has specifications that pools are prohibited from front yard setback.
Add the terms to be effective March 1st, 2022.
Mr. Sullivan, do you agree with that?
No, because I guess I don't understand what the benefit is to extend it to March 1st or March 31st, whatever date it is you're looking at. If we extend the purchase of the permit to that date, there's no chance that those pools are going to be put in for the next rental season. So I don't understand why, that's what you were talking about, right? To give people a chance to get in for the rental season. But if we put it in January 1st, they're not gonna get it in by March or April, and then we're gonna be dead for June, but then they'll put it in after that. And that's the same thing that's gonna happen if you extend this period to March 1st instead of January 1st.
I'm trying to be sensitive to the survey issue.
I was gonna let,
Okay, I'm trying to be sensitive to the survey timing issue.
well, Brian wanted to put it to March 1st so people could get it in for the rental season, and I don't think that's gonna make that possible. All it's gonna do is extend the time for somebody to apply for a permit, but it's not gonna get it in for this rental season.
Well, I I guess by rights, they would have a year from March the 1st to put it in, but that's my thinking. If we got a pool delivered on March 15th, as far as my company goes, I could definitely get it in the ground before rental season and past, I think. But people will start planning ahead because they're gonna have to. And, you know, we'll probably get a little bit of uptick in permits, but I don't think it's gonna be a log jam in there. But
It's just, I don't think.
really, what's another 60 days? It goes by quick. I mean, it's no big deal. So most people are gonna go ahead and jump on it and do it. They're not gonna wait till the last minute. But somebody could bring in 10 permits on at the end of February.
Tim, do you know how many pools we have in the front setback?
I don't.
Any idea?
I really don't.
I was just sitting here, you know, there's one on Scotch Bonnet, I know one on.
It seems, every time I drive down the street, it seems like there's 10,000 of them, but there probably might not be but 10 of them, I don't know.
There's not really that
Yeah.
many.
There's more on Ocean Boulevard that have gone in this year. There's a couple in the 600 block, as I recall. I know there's one that exists in the 800 block from before. My mind is there's another one. There's a handful, and I'm not east.
I know where the first,
west.
I know where the first one went in at, it's in the 700 block.
There's one in the 800 block too, and there's,
Yeah. Ron did that. I remember it because I took it to, that's how we came to the conclusion that the exception was in there, because I originally denied it. That's how it started.
Procedurally, where we are, we've got a motion on the floor. The motion maker offered to amend, the seconding party disagreed, so the original motion's on the table. Are you ready to vote, or do you want to continue to discuss, or what's your pleasure?
Can we not get one second?
Can somebody else second
You know what, I don't know the answer to that question.
I think you have to have a second before you take it to the vote,
Right.
since the.
Well, you've got to have a second, I
can we
understand
have
that.
can we have a different
You
second?
can have a different
Yes.
seconder. Yeah.
I'll second.
All right,
Okay.
That's the March 1st deadline. Done.
Right.
Okay.
all right, are you ready to vote now? All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
4-1. Mr. Sullivan's the one. Okay, March the 1st. All right, what year is it? It's 6 o'clock. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Hewitt, number 9.
Yes, sir. Ordinance Amendment 2125 that I've categorized as a housekeeping entry to the year-ending budget 30 June has got two administrative changes to it, or corrections to it. First, in the reference lines, as reads Ordinance 2125 Fund 20 Debt Service Amendment. That's Fund 30 Debt Service Amendment. And then on the actual amendment itself, in the line that reads Description Debt Service Capital Outlay, account number 30-010 8000. It should read account number 30-0810 7404. It's strictly an administrative change. This is the budget amendment to reclassify the down payment on the Vector truck from a capital outlay vehicle line to a more appropriate line as requested by the auditor, titled Debt Service Capital Outlay. No new money, no new expenses. The auditor just wants to change the name of where it happened from.
I move we accept ordinance 21-25.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Number 10, Mr. Hewitt.
Last month, I reported that the Local Government Commission had approved the loan with PNC for a 27.7, almost 27.7 million dollars. This ordinance amendment establishes the sinking fund budget lines necessary to accept and disperse monies from that sinking fund. Is a necessary part of our project.
I make a motion that we approve amending the ordinance 2126.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Number 11, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. We've got an addendum to the original engagement letter with Martin Starnes and Associates. The letter is to acquire supplemental funds related to the services to be offered outside the scope of the audit for the fiscal year 30 June 21. That's $2,000 per the auditor. The Local Government Commission said this should be an addendum to their agreement rather than as a contract amendment, since it's not directly related to the audit and is outside the scope of the audit contract. So the budget adjustment at attachment 2 provides the funding for the additional services in the amount of $2,000 from within existing resources, i.e. it realigns the board's available to appropriate funds line to the professional services line. And if the board desires that the auditor attend, that an auditor attended review and brief of the audit to the audit committee, it needs to approve the contract addendum and its related budget adjustment in the amount of $2,000.
This is for
The auditor to outbrief the audit committee.
So it's not, it is outside the scope of the original contract.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Is there a motion from anybody?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the additional charges and allow the town to pay them for them to come in and brief our audit committee.
Second. Any discussion? And Mr. Hewitt, I believe this was put in place by the commissioners.
It's a function of having the audit committee. It's, since we have an audit committee, and it requires their attendance at the audit committee's meetings, that's not part of the standard local government commission contract. So it's above and beyond the normal LGC standard.
Did we pay for this last year and the year before? Was there a charge for?
Last year, remember, the audit committee didn't meet because of COVID. Prior to that, it was a different auditor, and there wasn't a charge for that type of review.
They're from here.
All right. We ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, number 12, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. The proposed water and sewer system development fees revision. The system development fee report that was prepared by Reftelis and approved by the commissioners at the 15 June meeting has an effective 1 October 2021 effective date. Based on that, the chart below has been developed and shows the current and proposed fees accordingly. A synopsis of that chart is currently the water system development fee is $100 a bedroom, sewer's $2,700 a bedroom. The proposal is, the maximum amount that can be charged for water is $960 a bedroom, and sewer, in fact, has decreased the maximum down to $2,240 a bedroom. The proposed rates for water are $460 a bedroom and $2,240 per bedroom for sewer. It's proposed in the existing fee schedule, there's a protocol that provides for crediting those that have paid previous sewer share fees, and that this proposal would follow that protocol in crediting those that have already remitted their sewer share fees in accordance, but at the reduced proposed rate of $2,240 a bedroom. The board had established the 1 October 21 date as the effective date for that. It's not intended for this to be adopted, but the intent was to be able to introduce it for public consumption so that an ordinance could be developed, or the fee schedule could be revised accordingly for consideration at the September meeting. But
I have a question. What was the rationale for the 460 on the water? I looked at this, and the credit for sewer, if you have, I always call it bought into the sewer system, was you get credited for 5 bedrooms. Right. So right now, if you had already bought into the sewer system, you're paying 5 times 100 for the water, and that's your fee.
right.
If you have paid into the sewer under the new system, obviously now you are paying 5 times 460. So there is an increase in your fees. I think the increase is about $1,800. It's not astronomical. If you haven't bought into anything, then this actually, the new fees reflect a decrease in the fee structure compared to what we were charging before. So I was assuming that we were not proposing any scenario where we would be reducing the total fees, but there are scenarios where this does.
And your question is?
So what was the rationale for picking the 460 as a number instead of, say, 560, which would then have been
I will profess
neutral?
to having sensitivity to making sure that there wasn't an undue burden on the contracting, the general contractors and those that may be building homes. Simply put, that $460 is the actual reduction in the per bedroom sewer fee, and taking it to 460 on the water side actually is a net increase of 360. The implementation of the system development fee last time also corresponded with a reduction in the stormwater fees that were previously collected. We don't collect those anymore, and to my understanding is that would have been about $1,200 to $1,500 for a 5-bedroom house, depending on how much impervious surface you had. So the net increase is probably going to be, if you wanted to factor in the cost to the contractor, is probably going to be to the $300 to $500 range on a permit for a bedroom house. Now, there's all types of scenarios within that, but the going in issue there was to try to stay as neutral with an impact on the construction industry here at Holden Beach, especially coming on the cusp of the extravagant increases in building prices that we went through over the last 6 months. Now, that's tailing off somewhat, and if anybody has that figured out, They're probably not here, but that was my rationale. Now, there's a over here and a over here with the range that can be put into there. We had to start with something. That's what I've proposed as to start with something. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But it seemed, and it may be naive on my part, it seemed that that was almost a no harm done with a little bit of increase. It wasn't tied to any conscious decision on buying a capital investment, because that goes back to what the fees were developed on.
Just looking at the maximum allowable fee, the proposal is less than 50% of what could actually be charged, right? The number that could be charged is $960.
Yes, sir.
And where you're proposing $460 as a number. I don't know if the audience understands, but that's a huge break if you're building a 4 or 5, 6 bedroom house.
I was.
From the maximum that
Yeah.
could be charged, right? From where the benchmark is today, it's an increase.
Yes, but
Yeah.
that was because that benchmark was just pulled out of thin air.
I mean, the research that I did in the past, a lot of times it seemed that 60% was a number that was being picked as a sort of, charging 60% of maximums. And again, my looking at this was, I just add things together, and water sewer was $2,800 per bedroom, and now it's $2,700 per bedroom. And I was not thinking that we would have a reduction in the added up fees for properties that don't fall under the already bought into the sewer. So I was looking at it as being a neutral number would be 2,800, which would add 100 to the water. And that to me was was my starting point. And how to go from there, whether it needed to be higher than that or not, was then the consideration of the impact on the homeowners who are building, because the water fee does drive up their cost. The last time that we faced this, the criticism to the board was, we're never going to be able to make any fee increase back up, because houses simply don't assess for this. The market isn't that strong. We can't bear this. Well, I can't say that the market isn't strong right now. And house prices and assessments have strengthened tremendously. You're looking at adding, like I said, the water going from 100 to 460, you are adding $1,800 on to the cost of a house for the permit increase. If you add another $100 to that to have a 2,800 sum, you're adding another $500 for that 5-bedroom hypothetical house where somebody has already bought into the sewer system. I had, in my mind, started at 560, quite honestly. And again, a number of the towns that I've looked at, 60% seemed to be a number a lot of them were comfortable with. 560 is a little under 60%. So that's just what I'm putting forward in contrast to what David's put forward. Neither one of us is right or wrong. I'm just explaining how I propose 560. And
We're strained as it is. We got a lot of pushback on this subject the last time. I don't want to see it again. A lot of people spoke up. It was mainly real estate agents and builders and people that were affected. And I think if we try to I think this is it's fair, and it's a little more money, but not a lot, and I think people will be willing to live with it, and we won't get a onslaught. So I'm okay with it, like you got it. You know, the water's going up, everything's going up, and I get it, but you're gonna, just my opinion. I think it's a fair shake.
I look at it as the fair shake to the town as well for the money that gets saved for the future when significant work needs to be done on our water system. And that's the trade-off. The development fees are there for a reason, for future savings. So, again, I don't want to go to the maximum, but I agree with Mike, this is less than 50% of what we can charge. Other towns I look at, it's in the 60 range. To me, neutral is, we've been charging $2,800 water, sewer, now we're gonna charge $2,700. We can keep charging $2,800 to be consistent. Yes, I do understand that the water fee going up means that the people who have already bought into the sewer do have higher fees. It's a couple $1,000s. I think in the scheme of things, the price of new houses going up, I think that's still reasonable. I don't think that's unreasonable.
If I could add to the discussion here, I know that there was a lot of focus the last time on the per bedroom charge. The actual numbers on the sewer side anyway, that the sewer fee will affect, we may have, if you look at what we've collected, there aren't relatively that many fees remaining to be collected. We're in the crediting a whole lot more of the previous remitted fees than we are on the collection. Now, there are some. I mean, there are some, but if we pulled, you know, if we went back and looked at the 40 houses that Tim's got under construction at any one time, there might be one or two that had actually paid the $2,700 a bedroom each, you know, new fees that hadn't paid it in the past. So where the rub is for the larger portion of it is the increase on the water side, which is the $1,500-$1,800 cost. Is that?
That's correct, but at the same time, you gotta remember, when the original fee that y'all talking about created, can I talk loud enough? That created that, it was at that point that the $1,200 to $1,500 worth of stormwater fees went away, that actually went into that water, I'm assuming it went in somewhere in one of those line items. And so it never got reconsidered when they redid them. So effectively, they've been getting that discount this whole time. That discount never came back. In other words, it went away, it never came back. So if the fee was actually being charged, I'd say overall, you're somewhat of a percentage a little lower than what you were charging before with these fees.
There's no action that we're requesting tonight from the board.
Okay. Are we through discussing?
Unless the board would like to give direction.
I knew this was gonna take a couple months to get through this,
Right.
and yeah, just like last time. So first discussion is, everything's on the table. Okay.
Ready to move on? 13, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. At the last board meeting, the commissioners asked or directed the staff to evaluate and rank the parking firms that had submitted proposals in response to our request for same. We received 4 responses that y'all had gotten previously, and they are Lanier, Auto, Pivot, and Premium. What we've done is we've prepared a decision selection matrix for you. The process that we used to evaluate the firms consisted of scoring each company from 0 to 4 on each one of the 10 criteria contained in the RFP. The 10 criteria that were not weighted, they were equally rated. 9 staff members individually and anonymously graded each proposal by each category with the totals compiled accordingly. So where we ended up with, based on the 10 criteria and everybody taking a hack at it, Auto Connect came up with a total score of 245. Premium was the second highest at 242. Really not that much of a difference. It's like 1% different. And Lanier Parking at 215 with Pivot Parking at 112. I don't know what the board, how you would want to proceed since Auto and Premium are pretty close. I think that you can easily discount unless we've all made, a faux pas on Lanier and Pivot, that you may want to consider having Auto Connect to come in and speak with you like you did Premium Parking. The guy from Premium is the one that came in and talked to the board, but I would just offer that up as an idea.
Can we have both of them come in and present to the board?
Well, you've already had Premium to come in.
did.
Well, I know, but have them both come at the same time and there are pros and cons that I think we could ask questions that would make it a little clearer to me. I mean, with that little bit of difference there, it'd be hard for Auto Connect to come in and answer questions without Premium being able to respond.
I'm not familiar with that format being done where you have 2 competitors coming in and basically cross-examining one another, refuting their capabilities. I'm making assumptions there, but I'm not familiar with that type of format, Mr. Smith. If you would like them to come in and be interviewed by the board, I think that would probably be arranged. Having them to come in at the same time and be interviewed is like having two people to come in for the same job and be interviewed at the same time, it would seem like to me, unless I miss that. But again, Premium's already had a swing at the baseball here. I know you weren't on the board at that time, but.
Dave, is it possible that staff could talk to both of them and then you could make that decision or recommend a decision to us? It just seems to me the logistics are with the staff. You guys know, you guys know more than we do about it, and especially Tim and the requirements that you're gonna need from these guys, and just a couple little specific things was equipment maintenance. I don't know, from my understanding, there was not gonna be that much equipment even involved, and that's an 8-point difference. So just to ask a few questions of them both, I wouldn't get them in together either, but I think those two are close enough to call in and have an interview, but I'm not sure.
I
We
would
need
mean
to
at
be
the
the
same
ones that
time,
do that.
I mean, to be able to bring them in and speak with him again to be sure we're clear.
Well, we need a decision to move forward with
By
the
October.
parking committee and all of that stuff, so it's kinda need to know which way we're going. And I think to doubt your decisions on who you would select would be ludicrous of us to do that. So I would leave it up to you guys. Tim, whoever needs to be involved and make that call.
That answer is yes. I mean, if the board wants us to make a recommendation, it's gonna have to be subject to a contract, of course, but we can make a recommendation. I mean, I don't believe that we're gonna have a problem making a recommendation. Those are both highly qualified, and if we talk to them, that's a natural progression of making a selection when you got two front runners. If you, to talk to them and see which one you really like.
That's.
I mean, I don't have a problem doing that.
With the points that close together, David, I think they both deserve a discussion with, if not the board, the staff, and you're the guys that are gonna have to deal with them, so it will be a decision that needs to come from you guys.
Okay.
Or a recommendation from you guys.
If there would have been a sizable difference, we could have made a decision. So we gave it to you guys to look at, and you did a good job looking at it, but it's awful close. Those two are awful close. I'd hate to make that call.
Could that be done before our next meeting, sir?
We can bring it back to the board with a recommendation at the next meeting,
Yes, sir, please.
if that's the desire of the board.
Consensus?
Yeah.
Fine with that.
All right. Are we done with that? Number 14, Ms. Pat.
Yeah, we, in June, we unanimously agreed the remit of the Board of Commissioners, the Parking Committee, in what we expected from them for the October meeting. I know that the Parking Committee, there's been some issues getting everybody together. We are now 6 weeks roughly from October. I'm suggesting that the report for the board to help make a decision how to go forward, that's outlined in the tasker, as I call it, could be handed to staff to do the report with the parking map, town-owned all of these issues, to get it on a map, to get the formal numbers, and then have the parking committee, whatever tasks they still have that I assume will be dealt with in September, they can finalize and focus on that, because I'm not aware that anybody on the parking committee was given a responsibility to put a report together. Or were they? Had somebody started doing, the parking committee? The information is with staff.
Yeah, that's what they've had to get it.
It's, well, so it's not really necessary to wait another couple weeks for staff to start to generate the report. The longer you wait, the less likely it is it can be ready for October. That's my opinion, and I would ask the town manager whether or not staff will have the resource to put a report together in line with what the BOC requested, so that at the October meeting, everything comes together.
I'll answer that this way. We can put something together. How acceptable it's going to be to the commissioners may be another question there.
Well, if you look at it, 1A exists somewhere, right? There's gotta be, that's gotta be around. We've talked about B in some of the options, because we got 200 plus emails about it. C is something that somebody has to, that's pretty easy to do. I mean, and I would even be glad to do that. The financials, that's where this vendor comes in. I mean, pretty much.
And when the
So-
parking committee could maybe make suggestions.
And then we
on the
can make
rates.
some decisions. It's hard to do anything when you,
Well, I guess on the financials, here's what I would say. Everybody had a proposal in there that seemed to be the $5 per hour, $20 a day, as I recall. It's probably because that's with a lot of different towns and everything. I remember both you and Gerald early on talking about that's the kind of number that is working up north a bit, other places, but is it the right thing for here? So I think the discussion of what the rate should be, because the vendor suggests 20 doesn't mean it has to be 20.
Correct.
Maybe 20 is correct. But that to me is something that the parking committee could go through and decide on what do we think the best numbers are, or lay out a couple scenarios, and then when you get the final number, blessed number of parking places, you can do the calculations and see how much it brings in. We've gone from this was about using paid parking to help defray the costs of having a lot of beach traffic from our neighbors, and it was trash, and it was police, and it was, the bathroom maintenance and things like that, and it's become much more than that now. I don't know in my mind exactly how much money the parking now is envisioned to cover. It's more than it was when we started this. But there must be some sort of a target number that you're looking at for revenue to cover everything now that has been presented as paid parking can contribute to this and this and this. And that number helps back calculate.
thank you. I would have to back into it. I'd have to know how many spots we got to.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is again, I think the number of spots that currently exist is pretty well known. It's just not all mapped out. And then it's what assumptions do you have for other possibilities, and then you start to add those up. But you can have a couple numbers in mind for financials, and then when you get the parking numbers, you do the calculations. There's the 20 because everybody is recommending it. But is there another number, given your druthers, you'd rather use?
We may have a vendor that won't go in unless it's 20. Or there could be some stipulations. I think,
You could.
if we get the vendor, then we got somebody to talk to about what we're gonna do next. I think anything else, we might as well go eat dinner and talk about it, because I don't see how we can make a decision without pretty much all the information in place.
You knowing exactly
Mainly the vendor.
what are the town-owned parking spaces that we have available now would be important information for the vendor too.
And they may do all of that legwork for you guys. I don't know.
I think we should have an electronic map that's maintained. I think we're going to end up going down the road of paid parking. Having an e-version of a map that you can add to and subtract from easily is something that should be, there's something that should be built, and it has value. Looking at where we have parking and the numbers, and should there be some modifications made to those areas, I think is important. David and I did a drive of the beach not long ago, and we came back out the east end, and David, you and I noted the way that, it's just a parking area. And in a lot of that area, 4 cars were parked where 5 could park, because there is no marking. Those kinds of considerations need to be made. You see it at the 800 block by the pumping station all the time. Depending on how people park, you may end up with a couple half-car spaces. These are all things that start to add up. So, you know, how you maximize, how you organize. But one of the reports contained assumptions that I believe they got from the town, correct? The number of spaces that they used to calculate?
That RFP actually put the burden on the responder
So
to
they actually-
estimate.
So they came here and looked.
Those that scored high probably did a better reconnaissance on scoping the number of parking spaces than those that scored low.
Mhm. But again, when we put this together and the whole board agreed on this, this was the kind of information we felt would be most helpful to make the right decision, and it's also going to be background data that we keep. As I said, if we add or subtract in future, it's easy on an electronic version to add or subtract and visualize it. So I guess I go back again to, by October, can the staff create the part one? The part one is the critical part for the staff.
And once that's developed or finished, then we can take the parking committee to discuss the rest after we have chosen the.
Obviously, for part three, public communication engagement plan, that you have to have the provider.
Sure. Sure, we can come up with a map, we can come up with counting parking spaces, we can geolocate all that stuff. You know, things like what town property is suitable for conversion, we can make some assumptions, and that'll be subject to debate. But the answer to that is sure,
The
the
thing is,
staff can do that.
it'll all be there. It'll all be
Yeah.
there for visualization. And again, this is what we can do.
You know,
I,
estimated cost for conversion, sure,
mhm.
we can do that. What's available for purchase, we know what those are, you know.
I think it's
The next question, you know, that may be, maybe. I think that y'all have already established your time frame though for implementing, or hard consideration of implementing paid parking to be next season.
correct, and that,
Right.
so we,
That
starting in
decision's
April.
already made.
Yeah, I think so. The only reason it would get unmade is if for some reason the numbers now showed that everything is upside down. But we said we wanted to make the final decision on everything at the October meeting to give time to work with whoever the provider is. There's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be ordinance, there's going to be, language needs to be built into the ordinances. There's going to be signs that need to be made. There's going to have to be some considerations made if certain areas in the town are made no parking to avoid issues. So, you know, we're going to need that several months, and working with the vendor on the communication and rollout. So there was a reason we set October to have everything together. So town staff will produce, I guess, the part one. The parking lots. And costs for conversion or upgrade or whatever.
If that's the charge by the board to the staff, sure, we'll be glad to.
I move that we ask the town manager to have staff prepare the map and the formal numbers of what exists, what currently exists, what the town owns that they can convert, and then add what is expected to come out of the pier property and potentially block Q, because that is everything that's been on the table, as I understand it. And that's the number. That is the map.
Everybody get that motion? Is there a second?
A second.
All right, Mr. Bryan. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, number 15, golf cart.
Yeah, I would like to propose we ask Jeremy to add to his monthly report the number of golf cart citations that are given. You are able to give us a number of verbal warnings, which I don't know how that can be documented if you don't actually give them a ticket. But if you would, do you think it would be possible to give us a report on the citations given to the improper use of the low-speed vehicles?
So based on last month's and then seeing it back on here this month, I went and pulled and tried to figure out how I could do it. And it's doable, but again, I'm gonna have to, I'll go through the process with you and talk about that. So on our citation audit that prints out here, it gives us citation date, the citation number, the charging officer, the license plate number, the violator, name and date of birth, race, sex, and description of the charge or violation. Again, we don't document anything by vehicle type. It's by the charge, and the defendant, the driver, is charged with a violation. So the only way we can do this is for me to take all 6 pages here and actually run each North Carolina license plate, or South Carolina or Virginia, whichever one it was, and see if it comes back registered to a Chevy Equinox or a E-Z-GO low-speed vehicle. And then I'll have to actually write that down and break it down. Is it doable? Yes. Is it ideal? Honestly, of 49 citations, and I don't know how many calls we had this month. Was it 600 or something? Yeah, 680. I mean, you're talking about me breaking down a very small portion of what we actually do. I'm not knocking the golf carts. I understand they're an important issue, but I don't know. To me, I'm spending too much time on golf carts that we're addressing. Our department's doing what we can for them. So if it's what you want, I'll break it down and do it. Again, I don't see the benefit of it. That's going to be my process for actually getting those reports to you.
How do you document the warnings?
They're the same way. They're in
The
the,
verbal warnings, how do you document those?
when they make a stop, they put those same in the computer.
Then can we not do that? That it was just a...
They're already in the computer. That's so.
Out of the citations that you give, you said you gave 50 some a month.
There was 49 citations this month, that's correct, with a total of 60 some charges, I think. 62 charges total on 49 citations. And I didn't even pull the warnings this time, but it would be basically I'd have to pull the same report to say that we had X amount of warnings, but.
But with a full complement of officers, I really don't see that would be that difficult. It's just something that we need as we move forward with the possibility of some type of ordinances involving the low-speed vehicles for operation on the streets of Holden Beach. We need to have some kind of background as to there's no problem, so there's no tickets being given, or there are. But Jeremy, I mean, as far as the enforcement of that, I mean, there seems to be a little disparity there from what is perceived
Right.
by the folks that I speak with and personally. I can remember when you stopped me, when you first came on the force, for having a dim taillight on my boat trailer. Not out, but just dim. I remember it well, because it
Okay.
scared the crap out of me. I didn't know who you were. So, you know, you were all about safety. You said it was a safety issue. Okay, well, this is a safety issue that I feel like I need your support,
Right.
both enforcement-wise and with reporting back to us. I mean, if you see in a few months that, you know, we're giving an adequate number out versus the vehicles, and then there won't be a point we need to continue to look at. But again, if the number's really low versus what, you know, is envisioned, you know, you talked about not being able to see if they had seat belts on because it's not 3-point belts. Man, I mean, I don't have eagle eyes by any means, but I can see that.
Right.
The number of people that have actually ridden by some of your officers in violation. Just this past Sunday at the concert, for instance, with 6 kids on the golf cart, none of them restrained. And, you know, they sitting right there and, you know, there was not even a, hey, you need to tighten up or nothing. I think enforcement or the amount of enforcement I would like to see that.
Right.
Is the reasoning behind it, Jerry.
And I get it, like I said, we're enforcing it, we're doing what we can. If that's the report you want, that's the process to get it. My opinion is, you're breaking down such a small part of, golf carts isn't our only job. We've got such a vast majority of other things that we're doing. And to sit here and break these numbers down, I'll do it if that's what the board wishes, but that's the process with it. And again, I think it's putting too much focus on a small area.
Jeremy, you did make the point that out of the traffic stops and all your citations and charges, you had 15 child restraint.
That's correct. Now,
Were those mainly golf carts? See,
Again,
that's where the focus becomes important. And, you know, I'm gonna go back to the days when police did carry a pad of paper and kept track of things. Is there no way when something happens with a golf cart where there's a ticket, that the police officer can make a notation and simply hand it in, and at the end of the month, you know, you can count up everything and see how many, child restraint is, I think, the top one we're all worried about.
Right.
Is there no way of doing that and not getting into all the electronic and modifications, but a simple way of getting a count that we can see where, if there are issues, where they are?
Right. I'm gonna answer this.
That number
Yeah.
isn't necessary.
Yeah.
A guesstimation, or this is about what we've done in a monthly period as part of your police report, would be sufficient.
Right. And so to answer in about, and again, I'd have to go run these tags. I'm gonna guess the majority of those child restraints that were under 16 were on low-speed vehicles, but I can't, you know, without actually pulling the numbers and going and running all of those, I can't tell you that for sure. And to answer your question, and I mean this with all due respect, I have worked for micromanagers. They want to know every detail of everything you do, and I trust. We give these guys and girls over here, they're great officers, we give them a gun, a badge, the authority to arrest, to take free. That is the ultimate responsibility, to be able to take somebody's freedom and or life if it gets to that point. So I say this with all due respect, the type of agency I'm going to run, if you need this information, I'll run it myself, but I'm not going to ask them to sit there because I know from an officer's perspective, from being there, if a chief had come to me and said, I need you to write down every time you stop a golf cart and what you write it for, and it's too, their responsibilities are too vast. And again, I'm not knocking it. If it's the information you want, I will get it to you, but this is the process to do it. And I'm not going to task them with such a micromanagement type deal. And again, I mean that with all due respect. It's not the type of work I'm going to ask them to do. They're doing the job. I'm not going to ask them to, you know, tell me every time you do it. I trust that they're doing the job, and I know they are. So that's my answer to that.
I won't speak for the other people, but I think what I would suggest and what they're looking for is at the end of the shift, when Officer Smith is going home, he just puts down 2 golf cart summonses. End of story. Don't really care. at the end of the month, you know that all you have to do is look at one sheet of paper, and it says 2, 1, 3, 6, you add it up, tell us there was 40 or there was 12.
Right.
You don't have to get into much detail,
Don't need to do
and
it.
I don't think that's micromanaging anybody.
Right.
I'm just asking them to give you a simple way to tell us, just
So-
to answer this question.
So are we emphasizing to them that any of the other citations don't matter? The golf cart, or the,
No,
excuse me,
what
the,
we're saying is we want to know, we want.
and
to know-
that's fine. I'm just, if that's what you want, again, I'm not trying to get an argument. This is the process to get it, and I will do it. I'll be glad to do it. So if that's,
That's
if,
what we want.
okay.
We want to know exactly how many citations per month, okay, with golf carts.
Okay,
We got a situation going on here, and we want to find out.
okay.
I think that's well within your means to be able to do.
It is, it is.
Not asking for a whole lot here, but when we do take the time to ask you, because the people are asking us, then you need to hear us. Okay? People are asking us, they're on us.
I understand that.
Okay, so, number one, you work for the county.
You're right, and, okay, I'm not gonna
It ain't
get,
about, hey, it's about the people asking, so hey, let's let people be heard.
I understand that. Yes, sir.
Not that, you know, this is very simple, it's not rocket science either. Let's see what the deal is with the golf carts.
Okay. If that's the report you want, then that's the report you'll
That's
get.
what we want.
Okay?
All right, we ready to move on?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Chief.
absolutely.
Ms. Pat, 16.
Yeah, okay. When the state of emergency was relaxed so that we could start having the public come in again, and the decision was made to not broadcast our meetings anymore, there was a situation where there was somebody who was going to try to participate remotely, knowing they couldn't vote, but they wanted to participate remotely. And Heather and Katie came back and said, oh, we can't do that under the state of emergency, but when we go back to normal, it'll be possible again. So lo and behold, what crosses my email is a Coates Cannon's blog that is calling into question whether or not when we go back to normal, whatever that will be, whenever that will be, that perhaps we're not allowed to participate by remote. And I would personally like to understand that. That's step one, because it's in total contrast to, I think, what everyone was thinking. But the second part, and we'll get to it, is I would like to talk again about broadcasting meetings while we're still under a state of emergency. But first, could you explain what is going to happen when this state of emergency
Yes.
ends?
So before COVID, and they dictated all of the remote meeting requirements and what it means, the statutes were pretty silent when it came to remote meetings, specifically when it came to towns or board of commissioners. There is specific authority for other agencies to do remote meetings, but basically it was kind of hands-off, saying towns have the broad authority to determine their proceedings. We give them that great authority. But when it comes to remote meetings, there's nothing black and white in the books. So the way practice has kind of been in the past is it becomes an issue when someone can participate, and I'm just talking about pre-COVID. I think we're going to have, because of these gray areas that have been created with what has been with COVID, I think the legislature is going to hand down some better direction. But assuming we're going back just to pre-COVID, you can participate in remote meetings, but it gets hairy when you have that person that's participating remotely that may be necessary for their presence to constitute a quorum. Then you can get in some challengeable issues. Or if that person that's participating remotely, if you give them the authority to vote and they're the deciding vote. So that's kind of the areas that are up for challenge. I think the best way to move forward without any further direction would be you can allow remote participation, but do not allow them to count when it comes to purposes of a physical quorum being present or allowing them to vote, because those things can potentially be challenged.
Okay, and if I remember our rules of procedure, we don't allow them to count as a quorum, and we don't allow them to vote. So when we get out of emergency, we can go back to how our rules of procedure.
And I think those are the best practices.
Okay,
And I think also further limiting how many people can be remote in one meeting. That way you always physically have a quorum present. You don't have 4 people trying to call in remote.
right.
But I think the previous way you were acting was the best practice, pre-COVID.
Okay,
And the reason why we came into the issue before is now with COVID rules, if one person participates remotely, it is considered a remote meeting, has to be broadcast. And that's just under that state of emergency COVID umbrella.
okay. Thank you, because I was worried that it was all going to go away, and it sounds like the way we operate is still going to be okay.
Correct. And I think we'll get some further guidance. It just may not be immediate, but I think that's coming.
Okay. Then the second part of this was to actually request that we go back to broadcasting meetings until the state of emergency is over. I would move that we go back to broadcasting the meetings, and my reasoning is things are, let's just say, with COVID, they are constantly fluid. I think that there is the chance that any one of us at some point in time could end up being diagnosed. We test positive, we have to quarantine. We're not actually sick. You don't have to be sick to have COVID. And the only way we can participate in cases like that will be if we are still broadcasting meetings. I think that we're going to also have more people who are going to get uncomfortable with being in crowds if the numbers keep going up. I think it's just beneficial at this point to do the broadcasting, and when the emergency is done, we can stop doing it. I've had a number of our citizens ask for us to go back to the broadcasting. They liked it. For all of the complaints about hearing us and everything, they still liked it. And I don't want us to wait until we have a lot of rules come down from on high again and then have to specifically meet to vote that we're going to broadcast. So I would move that we start broadcasting the meetings again until the emergency is officially over.
There are a couple things I want to add in terms of broadcasting. Absolutely, you can do that, no problem. But when it comes to somebody does participate remotely, they're adding a little bit more requirements to what broadcasting means. Meaning, I think it would be a best practice to, yes, we're doing audio, but to be able to see who is speaking or have a procedure of identifying yourself before speaking, especially when you get in the muddy waters of ADA issues. You know, somebody that's hearing impaired or blind, how they're able to. So just some additional considerations of other than just audio stream. It may be worth looking into video or there's.
At the moment, it would just be going back to what we were doing to meet the minimum standard. And your point about us being better about identifying ourselves is really, it's a self-discipline thing that we can focus on. But I've made a motion.
Looking for a second.
Second.
More discussion.
Is that possible?
It's possible, but just so you know, it's posted on YouTube a day or two later as soon as I can format it. So that's how most people are listening to the meetings, they're just going to the YouTube recording. So it's kind of double doing what we're already doing.
But what we can't do, as long as we're under emergency, is we can't participate remotely. And I know it hasn't happened often, but I happened to be the last person to do it when my brother was ill and I called in. And my participating was important. And I want us, if something happens to us and we have to quarantine or we don't feel, none of us right now, I assume, if we're feeling the least bit ill, want to come and run the risk of infecting anybody. So it may just be a case of, I don't feel well today and I have a meeting and I feel awkward about coming to the meeting, but I do want to participate. I can't do it during the emergency unless we broadcast. And I feel strongly that we should broadcast while we're under this emergency so that we can participate remotely if, God forbid, one of us gets sick and has to quarantine or we're out of commission for a while.
Still looking for discussion.
I don't have a problem with it, it's not a whole lot of trouble, I mean,
Well, that's what I was asking, is if it's,
done,
It's not a lot of trouble, honestly, I just got more complaints though, because.
Yeah, well, I do every day, all the
I
time.
don't know why, we had more complaints when we were doing it Facebook than when people were just, everybody I talk to now, the reason this is empty is they're all just going to YouTube and listening to it a day later. So, it's not a problem, you're just gonna be getting the complaints again, so that's really up to you, not me.
And under the state of emergency rules, we still have that 6-hour rule, so it's not required that you guys come vote to do a remote meeting. As long as we can amend that notice within 6 hours of the hearing, we can still broadcast it then.
So if you do come down with a symptom, you could just put another notice out saying that we're gonna remotely be at that meeting. So it's completely up to the board. It's not trouble for me. I hit a button on Facebook and
Then I would just ask that if we're going to go back to it, let's all be diligent about announcing who we are when we speak.
I don't have a problem.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, it's unanimous. Number 17, Ms. Ferguson.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Much like when we did our beach nourishment project financing, we have several action steps in regard to upcoming financing for projects. Before you all this evening, you have a resolution to authorize the negotiation of one or more installment financing contracts. This was prepared by our bond attorney firm, Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein. It's a necessary component for the installment financing application to the LGC and to negotiate one or more installment financing contracts to pay the cost of remodeling and improvement of the lift stations and for the cost of purchasing the pier properties located at 441 Ocean Boulevard. It anticipates applying for amounts up to $5.2 million for the 2 lift station upgrades and up to $3.3 million for the pier properties. Actual amounts procured via installment financing will be subject to RFPs, construction contracting responses for lift station 2 solicitation, BOC and LGC approval. The amount proposed to be financed for the lift station upgrades includes the repayment to the water sewer fund of costs previously incurred with lift station 3 as approved by the BOC, as well as estimated project costs for lift station 2 currently under design and anticipated to be ready for bid review consideration for your September meeting. The suggested motion is approval of Resolution 2112.
Christie, I'd like to make a motion to approve authorizing you to finance contract negotiations.
Second,
okay,
further discussion.
I have a few things to say. Then this is really some of it moving forward, but first I do have one whereas in this that I don't think we should say the way we do. On page 40, whereas the town does not anticipate an increase in taxes to pay the installment payments, but the increase in taxes of any necessary to service the installment payments following due will not be excessive. This is written for both of them, okay? This is both of them together. I don't see how we do not anticipate an increase in taxes for the lift station work. I view having an assessment an increase in tax. So although I can agree with the town does not anticipate an increase in taxes to service installment payments falling due under the contract, they won't be excessive, I don't think we can say that we don't envision a tax increase.
Well, you can, because the lift station is an enterprise fund, and it's not tax supported. So by default, you can't raise the taxes to pay for the water and sewer fund.
You're talking about just ad val taxes.
Right.
Right, but I'm saying, I think of an assessment, if we have an increase in an assessment of some sort, that is an increased burden. That is a
Not a tax, though.
tax.
No, it's not. It's not a tax. That's an An assessment is specific legislation that's authorized by the General Assembly. It's not qualified as a tax.
Okay, I hope that the public catches that nuance in the minutes, because, you know, people are talking about not wanting increases in taxes, fees, et cetera, so I
Well,
just,
fees are different than taxes.
I know,
and
but
the
it's-
statutes are very clear on what's a tax.
they're talking about
and what's a
money.
fee.
They're talking about money. The other thing is, I do have one big concern, because when we, and this again goes to the what we eventually borrow, but when we went back in October 2020 about reimbursing all of Lift Station 3 costs, we didn't have other things like a 3-point-something million pier property in front of us. We didn't have the bike lanes in front of us. I would actually prefer not to claw back all of the money for Lift Station 3, because we have a very, very big number now that we're borrowing that wasn't anticipated when we first said, sure, let's do this. I mean, what is our balance of money in our enterprise fund right now?
Closing, unaudited
Unaudited.
closing cash equivalent securities is, as of 30 June this year, is probably in the $600,000, $700,000 range.
It's not huge, I understand that,
No,
but
you've built 2 lift stations.
I know we did, and the second one came out, the latest one was significantly above what the original sort of per lift station cost was. But I actually am thinking that taking back the money that is above what, I would say, the original estimate was between 1.4 and $1.5 million.
For the construction.
Yes, for the construction. Anything we spent over that to get that back, and then purchasing 796 from the sewer fund, water sewer fund, would be to me a rational number. I am uncomfortable with everything wrapping together now and the numbers. So when we approved in October 2020, we didn't have all of these other things we were borrowing for in front of us. So when it comes to defining the real number, I think we should have the board should have a discussion.
And I would submit to you that this 5.2 is up to, and it's going
I
to be,
know.
and it's going to be subject to what the RFPs come back with, you know, your good rates, and your decision on moving forward with contracting with a bank, that consideration could, it's going to be easier to come down.
I understand.
With an approval from the local government commission on exactly what you want to borrow, than if you miss it, you're gonna have to go back to it.
My discussion was not about this, it's about the next step, okay, the next step. But that one whereas, I do believe, my feeling is it can be misunderstood, but I understand what David says, so it's appropriate.
This is a requirement to make the
I know.
application to meet the timeline. If the board wants to proceed with an application, you need to move forward with it.
I think moving forward with contracts, though, they should separate.
All right, where do you want to go, commissioners?
Motion in a second.
You ready to vote?
Let's vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Unanimous.
I get to go again.
Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so as part of last year's goals for the Board of Commissioners, and I know it was a COVID year, but one of the things on the goals list was to increase our promotion, our marketability, our visibility With COVID going on, it took a while to accomplish some of the things that we wanted to do as the town. But one of the things we wanted to do was a promotional video. That was completed at the end of the fiscal year, kind of wrapped up in the June timeframe. So we have the video for you guys tonight that we're going to show everybody, and then we'll start to also use some of our still image photography for some promotions as well. So if everybody wants to direct their attention to the screens, we tested it yesterday, so hopefully it's still awake and going to work.
Come to Holden Beach, the family beach.
Good job, Chrissy.
That was a total team effort, whole staff, every department I think was represented.
I saw some familiar faces, but
Yes.
that's really good.
Who's that ugly old man with that cute little girl?
Chrissy, is this video, is that gonna be more for an online? Is that gonna be for online, or are we gonna start paying for TV advertisement, or?
think-
Where are we going with this?
I think we're still open for discussion on any of the ad slots, but we are going to put it on YouTube. We're going to share links so that if the realtors want to use that in any way, and then we're also going to do some stuff with billboards, I think on 17 with still photos.
Thank you, good,
Good job. Thank
yes,
you very much.
all of you.
Thank you.
Number 19, Murdoch, Sullivan, Ms. Pat, and Mr. Smith.
I am sorry, I don't know what I did with this agenda. Do you want to push that down below?
That's what I was
I
gonna
don't know
say.
what in the world
I-
I'm sorry.
I did wonder that.
Yeah, that usually goes below 23. I'm not sure
Yep.
where I apply it on that. So if the board is fine with it, we could push that to the last item before adjournment.
Okay, so we ready to go to public comment?
I've lost
Yeah.
my mind, I'm sorry. Yes.
Anyone sign up for public comments, or anybody want to speak to anything? Everybody awake out there? All right, if nobody wants to say anything. Town manager's report. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes, sir. Take the opportunity to let everybody know that we have a local tide gauge here out on the dock at the park. That is in participation with a partnership with the University of Hawaii, University of Chicago, Sea Grant, and the National Science Foundation. What this allows us to do is to gather real-time data that's uploaded to the cloud every 6 minutes. So the way that we're going to use this, in addition to identifying long-term trends and assisting emergency management decisions, it'll also be, hopefully we won't have to use it, but it'll also be useful in our disaster recovery efforts. A lot of times when we have to make, the engineer has to write his reports on what we experienced with the tide, that is a very valuable construct that they use. And since it's so hyper-local and exact, we think that it's a good thing. You may have noticed that the Merit is on station, has been since last week. Dredge operations relays to us that the project's going very well, and they should be able to start working through all the tides within the next couple of days, which will improve productivity. You probably aren't aware that the inlet was so choked up that they could only work at high tide, and they had to dig it down, leave, come back and dig it down. So with their progress so far, they anticipate working through the end of August to reach the project depth, which is 8 feet, providing nothing unforeseen happens. And there is an in-progress survey scheduled for tomorrow. So we'll see exactly how well they're really doing. Also as a sidebar, I want everyone to understand that the cost to have the merit to perform annual maintenance, not to Holden Beach, but as a programmatic whole on an annual basis, each year it takes $1 million to have the merit to come dredged inlet. Now that's not the operation that puts sand on the beach. That's just the side caster operation in the inlet. So it costs $1 million a year to do that. Regarding our federal cost share agreement on the potential for our federal project, we've received the Atlanta Region Corps of Engineers approval to execute and are in the process of arranging a signing ceremony with the Wilmington District Commander and the mayor within the next couple of weeks. We're going to get Colonel Bennett down here and show him the beach in addition to some of the other things that are unique to Holden Beach. Status of the East End Shore Protection Project. Now this is different from the side caster. This is when the Corps actually contracts a little dredge on the inside, and we dredge the Lockwood Folly Inlet crossing to put sand on the east end of Holden Beach. The bid documents are scoping about 100,000 cubic yards to be taken from the bin widener due to federal budget constraints, and we've been apprised of a potential opportunity that may allow us to piggyback another 100,000 cubic yards onto that contract. We're working on those details, and they are evolving as we speak. Seagull Street, the surveys have been obtained. That engineer design is in the works. And let everybody know you might have new neighbors. Looks like the state demographer's population counts are in. We're up to about 675 from our previous 575. Not a drastic increase, but it is 15–16%. And it does reflect in our state distributed revenues, those that are made on a per capita basis. Let the board know as follow-up from last month that the Brunswick Wholesale Water Agreement has been signed by the county, so that's in ink now. And just an aside comment, it just seems like that the summer's racing by. We've only got 3 concerts left, and tie-dye's already over. Once summer gets by, it seems like then we move into hurricane season. Let the board know we're in the process of reviewing our operations manual and procedures contained therein, just so that, you know, we're pretty familiar with that manual, but we want to make sure that that we refresh our memories on it, and also make any tweaks and changes to the operations that we've encountered over the last 4 hurricanes in the last 3 years anyway. Our goal, of course, is to ensure optimum readiness posture. For example, this is just coincidental, so I can't claim this. Our genset test, all of our gensets, we're looking at those, but we actually did our annual maintenance on the new town hall generator yesterday and today. I'd like to encourage, I know the chief mentioned it, but to get your decals, go ahead and get them early, and to do an inventory on your go bag, on your evacuation bag, and take into considerations the changes that you may need to make for your own personal go bags in the context of sheltering needs in mass locations because of COVID. Your mask, your hand sanitizer, and any other special considerations like that. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions of Mr. Hewitt? All right, thank you, sir. Mayor's report, between the chief and town manager. Hurricane's been mentioned a right good bit tonight, but I'd just like to reassure the public that we'll have a necessary meeting with staff and all the necessary involved parties in ample time to be prepared. I'd like to talk about the concerts for just a moment. We've been very fortunate with the attendance this year. Christy and staff have done a great job. And it seems to me like this year I've been in receipt of more compliments for the way the town operates the function. I guess the one that has appealed to me the most is the parents that feel the need to express their appreciation and the comfort and security they feel by taking more of their children to these concerts. Those of you that have been going for some time would probably have the same observation that I've had. It seems like in this year particularly, we've had more children on the dance floor having a big time with their parents, and the families taking the videos and all. You know, it is a family beach, and that just seems to be going really well. Mr. Hewitt mentioned the inlet expenses of the Merit, $1 million a year. You know, not too long ago, the town of Holden Beach made a decision to not continue with the efforts of a terminal growing. And since that time, we've continued to see the taxpayers spend more and more and more money down there in Lockwood Folly Inlet every year in maintenance. And, you know, every year prices keep going up, and I don't know where it's going to end, but somewhere along the way we're going to have to look somewhere else, because what we're doing, I just can't see that the money is an endless supply, you know, from the state, the county, the federal, and the town, and our neighboring town, and we're going to have to revisit and start looking at that again for financial sources. One of the change the subject to no wake zone, which runs from the west end of Yacht Watch subdivision to the marker just east of Lulu's restaurant. That is a no wake zone. And I live not too far from the bridge on the east side, and I see it daily, these jet skis, and Brian, I know you do too, jet skis going right through the bridge, wide open. People put their boats, brand new boats in the water, a few old boats, brand new boats in the water. As soon as they crank that motor up, take off wide open, headed toward the inlet. Somebody is going to get hurt. You know, you've got boats going under the bridge, boats pulling out from the boat ramp. You often see them almost collide because it's blind. I don't know, but I'm scared to death. And nobody, appears to me, is enforcing the no wake zone. And I've mentioned some officials, state, federal, and others, and unless you commissioners tell me otherwise, I'm going to start making a little bit more noise about it, because I even see state enforcement people ride by in boats and get passed by jet skis and other boats in a no wake zone. You know, the enforcement people are idling along, and then here comes a boat up on plane and passes them, and they don't do anything about it. Somebody's gonna get hurt. I know talk about the sunken shrimp boat. I know everybody in the room knows that the boat's gone, right, Brian?
Absolutely. Thank the
Hallelujah.
Lord.
We need to have a go shrimp boat party or something.
You got that right.
Another important thing, maybe most of you are aware, but Captain Pete's Seafood Restaurant is for sale. In case any of you want to buy it, and also the property around the bridge, commonly known as Jim Griffin, Virgil Robertson, Joe Taylor property. That's on the market officially now. Prices they're asking, I don't know how long it's gonna be there, but just to make sure everybody knows it is out there on the open market, whereas before it was kind of a behind the scenes type thing. So with that, we're looking at the end of the summer almost here, and it hasn't been a bad summer, but I sure wouldn't mind if it cooled off a little bit. And with that, I conclude and say, Mr. Brown, what kind of good news do you have, sir?
You've given a good report, and I'm gonna pass it on to the next.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the staff for taking time to review the RFPs from the parking that we requested from the parking people that offer the parking programs. I know that took a lot of time. There were 4 pretty good-sized manuals that had to be gone through, and to come back with pretty much what we had thought was about the best is commendable. If we can do as well with the deciding between the two, that would be great. That we're at the top of the list. I would also like to thank our assistant town manager, Christy, for her hard work on the Parks and Recreation programs this summer. The Tai Chi, the yoga, the tie-dye have been programs that I've had people come up and actually thank me for having those here at the beach. They thought that was definitely a plus. And the concerts, as Alan said, just the smiles on the people's faces, the kids, and the sheer numbers from what I've seen in the past to the numbers we have now. And Christy being there to make sure everything runs smoothly is just a testament to her hard work, and also the staff. I want to thank the police department. That right turn deal on Saturday, my gracious, I had brain fade and decided to go into town, and on the way back I said, oh no, it's 3 o'clock on Saturday. Man, I came right on the beach. I was absolutely amazed at how well that works. And it works, it does work. I just wish there was some way we could have a permanent solution for year round, but most of the time the stop sign works. But that's good, that you put it up at the right time, take it down at the right time. I think Jeremy, your staff's done a great job on doing that. And as we discussed earlier this evening, the enforcement on the golf carts. I know it's something that again is a personal issue, but I'd like to see us really. We all talk about safety. Alan's talking about the safety on the water. We've talked about the different aspects of safety with the pools. You know, this to me, with what I have seen, it seems to be something that I would like to see. As Mike alluded to at a meeting before, that if we show people that we don't want to ruin their vacation, but stop them and say you can't do this. And once they see that it's being looked after, I think it will curtail most of the bad habits. I know it's adults that don't wear them, and they have that decision, as I have before, and still received his ticket for not wearing them. So, but as a whole, I feel Holden Beach is running as smoothly, and everybody's as calm as I've really heard in quite some time. So, thanks to staff and everybody, all fellow commissioners, for everybody's hard work.
Mr. Murdoch?
I want to pile on a little bit to what you said about that shrimp boat. If anything could have got anybody killed, it was that. And it's been a long time coming. I don't know who footed that bill, but it was awesome to see that thing going. That property as well is under contract over there, so maybe something good will become of that whole piece of property over there. Thanks again to the Board of Commissioners and the staff for always a job well done, and the concerts and stuff, we listen to them on the back of those pontoon boats over there every Sunday, and they're awesome, and there's a lot of people there and they really enjoy it, so some good bands too.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank everybody here for attempting to stay awake, and would encourage, we got some empty seats, so would encourage some more people to come. And as as always, I welcome everybody's input, so send me an email, call me, whatever you need to do.
Mr. Sullivan?
Not much else to say. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and anybody who listens to it on the, the tape that we put up on the town. There are a lot of important issues that we have to discuss and make decisions on. And I would like everybody, this is preaching to the choir, but if you have some friends out there who, will talk to you in the food line about what's going on but don't show up, try to encourage them to give us their input, give their position on the issues that we're discussing, because the decisions that we make today, they're going to affect people well into the future. And I think we all realize that, and we want as much assistance from the community as we can get. Have a great rest of the summer, and see you in September.
That sounds like a song.
It is, it is.
Ms. Pat?
I'd like to especially thank Chris. Most of you know I'm a biker. I go out and bike, and there have been a couple times in the past month that I've come across a significant divot in the road that was not just on the edge of the road, but in the road that I was worried about cars. And, send those little messages into Heather. She passes them on to Chris, and by God, within a few days, those are taken care of. So I really do appreciate, and I think all the drivers appreciate getting those filled in, because some of them were getting pretty deep. I echo what Mike says about we have some big decisions coming up in the next couple months. We really want to hear from people. I asked last time, people, if you have an opinion on the pier, please let us know. Silence is consent, but it is appreciated to get everybody's perspective, to understand what you're expecting from us as we move forward. I think it's important that everybody has their say, and send them in to the commissioners and to Heather to be part of the public record. It's important. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and I hope I see you all in September.
Okay, Madam Clerk, are you ready to read your?
Yes, sir. Executive session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 1185 to instruct the staff or agent concerning the negotiation of the price and terms of contracts concerning the acquisition of real property, and pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 1183 to consult with the attorney.
Is there a motion we go into executive session?
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pleasure of the board, are we gonna stay here, or we're going upstairs? Mr. Hewitt?
If we're gonna stay here, I need to get some materials.
Well, just tell me what do y'all wanna do?
Let's go upstairs.
Going upstairs.
Motion to come out of executive session.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Okay, back in regular session. Okay, we need to add consideration of ordinance number 21-27 to the agenda. Is there a motion to add this to the agenda?
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, is there a motion to, or, Mr. Hewitt, do you want to go over this, read into the minutes, or anything, so that people listening will wonder what we're doing?
This amendment proposes to add $25,000 in funding for an inspection of the pier properties out of the B Part Fund, in accordance with the standards from the American Society of Civil Engineers for those types of properties.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we pass ordinance 21-27.
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we not want to include money for the building itself?
It is, it's here.
No, we-
No,
we-
that's,
No,
that's
you
just
said
the pier proper.
Oh, I
It
thought
does-
you said
It's
pier
not the
properties.
building, it's just, that's only the pier, not the building. I thought that's what you wanted to do.
I think the money, we don't have to go through this again. I think the $25,000 should be allocated for both the inspection of the pier, as was stated, and for the inspection of the building.
Second, that's what I understood.
All right, everybody on board with the understanding?
Yep.
So the verbiage needs to be changed? Or is it okay the way it is?
No, I think the verbiage is okay, it just need to
Okay.
add, in the oral part, add the building as well as the pier itself.
So the minutes will
Are you,
reflect,
are you good with that, David?
the minutes are gonna reflect both, right?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody ready to vote?
Yep.
All in favor of ordinance number 21-27, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, it's unanimous vote on ordinance number 21-27. And you made who made that motion?
I made the motion to adjourn.
Second. And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.